How I almost lost my husband of 20 years due to a need for attention and validation from another man.
Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started.
How I almost lost my husband of 20 years due to a need for attention and validation from another man. I met my husband in 1999. I was 19. He was 24. It was a summer camp as his mother was running, and we both were camp counselors. It was a lust at first sight the moment I laid eyes on him. I knew it would eventually and rather quickly turn to love. But here was this bear of a young man, 6'4", 228 pounds, rock solid physique, chiseled square jaw, played fullback in high school and college. He was the most gorgeous being I'd ever laid eyes on. We started dating not even a month after the camp ended, and by 2001, we were married. For the next early 2 decades, he did everything and gave me everything I could ever want. My husband has been the definition of provider and protector. He gave me a life where, if I wanted to quit my job and be a stay-at-home mom for our 3 children, I could do so and would never miss a step. My income is supplemental as best. I make a good amount, but my husband's take-home dwarfs my own. So how the hell, or more importantly, why the hell did I cheat on him for 9 months? Selfishness. Plain and simple. He's the only man I'd ever been intimate with up until my affair. Sure, he showed me plenty of affection and our sex life was awesome. But I never had my crazy 20s. I felt like she showed me love and affection because he had to, being my husband. We live in a decent-sized town in South Carolina, but generally ever know someone who knows the next person. You get idea? So the vast majority of people knew that I was O's wife, so I never got the dreaded A-word attention. That's where M came into the picture. M worked for my company, but one of the Northeast offices. My company was doing an aggressive expansion in the South region, and he was moved to my office around June 2019. His main task was to facilitate transitional expansion and train who was ultimately going to be his position in the region, me. M was to the polar opposite of my husband. My husband is a big, rugged outdoors man. He powerlifts, is covered with tattoos, and has long hair and a big bushy beard, but is soft-spoken. Not introvert, but not boastful. He's a pious, humble man. M is slender, dresses in designer names, drove an Audi RS5, and was very outspoken and headstrong. He also had a silver tongue, and I admit, I feel for it. Naturally, we worked quite closely, and M would pay me all kinds of compliments. It started out work-related, but evolved to subtle compliments of my appearance, and I lapped the attention up. I was smitten by him. He wrapped his tendrils around me, and I was too foolish to resist him. I confided in him. I began returning his affection because I was hooked on the idea of this clean-cut pretty boy, showering me with adoration. I had it justified in my mind that I wanted to experience this because it was new and exciting. In hindsight, it was the dumbest reasoning I've ever imagined. By August, it was a full-blown EA, and Halloween 2019 is where it became physical. At a company Halloween party I had went with a few of my friends. Normally, all would come, but he was just 3 months removed of neck surgery and in no condition to party, so he told me to go on and have a good time. Em and I met the tail end of the party and ended up back at his place. I was fully aware of what is going to happen. and I went ahead with it, thinking only of myself and my own needs. I justified it in my head by saying, "This is my experience." My husband began to suspect things Thanksgiving Day. At this point, the fog had completely engulfed me, and I was in contact with them as many times as I could. I'd started to pull away from my husband between October to then, especially since there hadn't been months since we'd been intimate. His surgery considerably hindered his movement. I had stepped outside on my parents' porch and he followed me outside saying, "Whoever it is, tell them you're with your family." He'd gotten pretty annoyed with how much I was checking my phone and sending texts, and I'd lied to him, telling him it was one of the younger girls on my team who had recently broken up with her boyfriend and was going to be alone for the holidays. He presses me over his issue with it on our way home, and after we put the kids to bed, and I snapped at him. So now, for the first time in really our entire marriage, there was a hint or resentment between us. And, in hindsight, I'm disgusted with how I treated him. I must have been out of my fucking mind. Fast forward to May 2020, when everything went south. I was now working remotely due to COVID, and my husband was now back working, having been cleared by his doctor in March. Due to the fact that a lot of the guys at his work were furloughed, he had to pull 10 to 12 days, sometimes 4 days a week. The kid would do their homeschooling, then either go to their friend's house one street down or to my husband's parents' house. They are very close to their grandparents, both mine and O's. This would give me several hours in the house alone. And you guessed it? I invited him over. Happened several times over the spring, but the one day in late May is one I dread and will never soon forget. I never heard his truck pull up, never heard him enter the house or come up the stairs. Always a mountain of a man, so normally you know exactly where he is in the house by the sound of his footsteps. And I were right smack in the middle of it when I noticed I was standing in the doorway with his phone out. It's the single darkest and most embarrassing moment of my life. Even recalling it now makes me sick to my stomach and teary-eyed. I pushed him off me and just stared at O. The only words that I could even muster out of my Tumba's mouth was, "I can explain." Cliche, right? O laughs at me maniacally and dresses me down before telling me to pack up your shit and get the fuck out of my house. He said it with such a ferocity and finality that I knew there was no coming back. I've never heard that level of fury in his voice the 21 years I've known this man. He leaves and closes the door behind him, and the weight of what just happened flattens me. All I could do was fall to my knees and scream. M then starts yelling at me also. I really couldn't tell you what he said if I tried. I was in a state of shock. He's screaming at me the whole time while I'm trying to gather whatever stuff I'd need in the immediate. M had put his stuff on and was adamant about not wanting to leave my bedroom alone because he was afraid my husband would cave his skull in. Remember? O was about 2 times the size of M. I opened the door and M scurries out of like a scared rodent. I try to approach O and he sternly says, "Don't you fucking dare." The words are burned into my mind. The pure rage in his eyes absolutely shook me to my core. I just wiped my face, picked up my bag, and left. I looked around the house as I left thinking this was the last time I'd ever see it. As it is his house, an inheritance from his grandfather who owned the land and built the house literally with his bare hands. By the time I reached the driveway, M was gone, and the keys to my car were back in the house I was no longer welcomed in. I've never felt more alone than that moment. I couldn't call my sister or my parents as I grew up in a super southern conservative home. They'd completely disown me if they knew what I've done, especially since they absolutely adored O. I have no brothers, so always like the son of my father never had. He'd be especially hurt by it. The only person I could call was my best friend Rain, who I've known since grade school. I called and explained to her everything. She offered to come pick me up, but I told her no. I'd find my own way to her place. The next 2 days were agonizing. I tried calling and text O every chance I could between crying and getting dressed down by Rain for being a total fuck up. I tried calling his parents, but his father told me the kids are gonna stay here a few days. You need to give O space. He'll reach out on you when he's ready, before hanging up on me. So that meant O had told his parents what happened. I began to resign myself to the fact that I was about to become an ex-wife. There's no way I could come back from this. I just ruined a 20-year marriage and broke the heart of the only man I've ever loved because I needed to have a fling. But then, D-Day plus 3, finally, he answered me and told me I could come home. Rain drove me back, and upon going inside, we sit on the couch. Rain sat right beside me as O tears me a new one. In 21 years, he's never so much as raised his voice at me. And here he was shouting at me for a good 40 minutes it felt. He asked me why I did what I did, and I answered him honestly. I didn't gaslight or lie. I fucked up, and I owned it. I'm not ashamed to say I begged on my knees for him not to leave me. He tells me, after all of it, he's not going to file for divorce. But things were about to change and not for the better for me. It appeared he'd spent 2 days apart from me devising terms of reconciliation, which included me resigning from a job, cutting all contact from M, giving him all of M's contact info so he could monitor M if he tries to contact me himself, and signing a post-nap later in the week. There was another stipulation he made that I won't mention because I don't want anyone to think he's a horrible person. He's not. I deserved all I brought upon myself for breaking my vows to him. I accepted his terms willingly. 2 days later, we met with a family lawyer he had contacted, and I signed the post-nap. No lawyer of my own because I wasn't contesting what I did. It's been 7 months since, and I do everything and anything I can to try and ease his hurt. And he is hurting. We're doing couples counseling, and I see the therapist 2 times a week to deal with my own feeling and come to terms with what I did. He puts in a brave face in front of everyone as the only people who know are as Rain, his parents, and them. But it tears me to shreds seeing how much I wounded him. He was always a jovial, warm-hearted person. It's hard to find that warmth anymore. He tries, he really does. But I broke the spirit with what I did, and I'm ashamed of myself for it. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror to the point where I cut my hair and dyed it dark brown. I'm naturally strawberry blonde because I couldn't stand what stared back at me. I don't try to smoother him. I give him space. I watch. If he asks something of me, I do it willingly with no questions asked. The most jarring aspects of this all, aside from the stipulation I don't want to mention, is the fact that he addresses me by my first name. For 20 years, I've been baby doll. Now, I'm just B. That hurts in a way I didn't even anticipate it would, but I accept it. I deserve it. And if I want to earn my title of a baby doll back, I have to build back his trust in me and restore his manhood. I have to be better than what I was before. He's afforded me a second chance, and I rightly don't deserve. and I refuse to take it or him for granted. Never again will I stray. Never again will I give him reason to lose faith in me. I love my husband to the core of my being, and I will do anything I can within God given ability to show him that. Today is our 20th anniversary. This morning, while we were eating breakfast with the kids, he kissed me on the lips for the first time since D-Day and said, "Happy New Year." My heart melted, and I had to excuse myself from the table to go into the guest bathroom and cry. I've never been more overcome with emotion at once in my life. Happiness, sadness, shame, regret. I think I had an anxiety attack, to be honest. A few minutes later comes into the bathroom and I just run into his arms. I squeeze him as hard as my tiny self can around his waist, bury my face in his chest and ugly crying another 10 minutes. He just stands there, his arms wrapped around me and hold me. I truly don't deserve this man. This beautiful, kind, warm-hearted, spirited, and just a man. Even with how badly I hurt him, he takes care of me. I will never jeopardize losing him ever again.